Learning the stove is no longer hot for scapegoat survivors of narcissistic abuse. If you were the scapegoat in a narcissistic family, then you learned that being who you were, your real, vital, and expressive self, was extremely dangerous. That the part of you that would feel proud, strong, excited, or confident absolutely had to be hidden. Because when it did show up, you might have been met with retaliation, contempt, mockery, or emotional abandonment, where you were biologically programmed to expect encouragement and love. A narcissistic parent can't be happy for their scapegoat child because they need that child to seem inferior. So celebrating the child's strengths and worth threatens the parent's own inflated yet fragile self-worth. This is because the parent needs their scapegoat child to embody the worthlessness that the parent can't stand in themselves. So what happens when you're responded to like this early and often in life? Well, you can learn that being yourself is risky, and that to survive, you must avoid knowing about, let alone using, those parts of yourself. It can be as if your real, strong, and valuable self is a pot of water on a stove. Your narcissistic parent insists that you be a different self. This self must be defective and undeserving. And you have no choice but to go along with this because otherwise you can't share in your parent's reality. And that would leave you feeling like nobody to no one. This process is like turning the heat up on the stove until the water starts to boil and the handle of that pot that is you is far too hot to touch. It's what you had to do to survive at the time. If you reached for and grasped your real self, then you'd get burned. And so you had to pull back and maybe keep your hands at your sides, learning, in essence, not to reach for who you actually are. Well, today I'd like to extend this metaphor and use it to explore how scapegoat survivors can begin to understand that that stove or their real self is no longer hot to the touch, that the danger is no longer present, and that your real self, the one that you were taught to fear, can be actually the key to what you're looking for today. Well, my name is Reid, and I'm a licensed practicing therapist in California and a scapegoat survivor myself. And I've worked to understand what are the most effective ingredients to recovery from this form of abuse. And this has led me to what I call the 3 pillars of recovery. Pillar number 1 is making sense of what happened so that you know it wasn't your fault. Pillar number 2 is gaining distance from narcissistic abusers today and closeness to safe people. And pillar number 3 is living in defiance of the narcissist rules. And before we dive in, I want to let you know about a free ebook I've created called Surviving Narcissistic Abuse as the Scapegoat. So if you grew up feeling unfairly blamed, criticized, or made to be the problem in your family, then this ebook can help you understand why that happened and how to begin recovering. It explains why certain children get scapegoated, how that can affect their self-worth, and what healing can look like. So if you've ever wondered, was it really me, or was something deeply wrong in my family, I think this ebook can give you the clarity and compassion that can help with answering that question. And you can find the link to download it for free in the description box below or by clicking here. Why the handle felt so hot in the first place? Well, let's talk about what it means for a child to feel like their selfhood is dangerous. If you're raised by a narcissistic parent, then your emotional reality is usually denied or twisted to fit into theirs. Their reality insists that there's always something wrong with you and everything's right with them. So your successes may get dismissed and your failures magnified. Your needs may be criticized and your emotions may be called too much. Trying to be yourself, in essence, leads to bad outcomes. Expressing joy can mean being told to tone it down. Asking for comfort can lead to being told to stop being dramatic. And feeling hurt could mean getting blamed for being too sensitive. Or excelling at something can result in getting ignored or mocked. In other words, when you reached for the handle that was the real you, you got burned. So you may have learned not to show when you were happy, not to expect others to support or validate you, not to trust that your experiences would be taken seriously, and not to expect encouragement when you stood out. All of these conclusions you may have drawn are designed to do one thing: keep your relationship to your narcissistic parent intact. And this meant loving an adult who devalued, deprived, and domineered you. Of course, no one would choose to love such an abusive person, but a scapegoat child has no choice. They have to create internal ways of organizing information that convinces them to love the person who seems to hate them. These are called pathogenic beliefs because they're adaptive in protecting the relationship between the child and the parent. But if we just break down what the word patho and genic mean, patho is a derivative of pathology, or we call that suffering when we're in the field of psychology. Genic is to generate. So a pathogenic belief generates suffering. And that's certainly what these kinds of beliefs I'm going to discuss do. So the scapegoat child forms two fundamental pathogenic beliefs. First is I deserve less than others, and second is there's something wrong with me. As painful as these pathogenic beliefs are, they do help the child avoid the worst danger of losing relational contact with their parent. So instead of being nobody to no one, the child is an inferior somebody to a superior someone. What happens in adulthood for the scapegoat survivor? You may no longer be living under your parents' roof, but things may feel the same on the inside. These painful pathogenic beliefs persist until we have the repeated experience that our relational safety no longer depends on adhering to them. So these sorts of thoughts may still predominate. That showing too much of myself leads to humiliation. Speaking up might get me rejected. Being confident will make people resent me. Or letting someone get close will just lead to pain. And then those thoughts can lead to these kinds of actions. Stay invisible. Doubt your perceptions. Edit yourself constantly. Or don't reach for the opportunities or relationships you actually want. In other words, it can still seem like the stove is hot. How to find out that the stove is no longer hot? Well, now that you're out of the objectively threatening situation of having to maintain a relationship to an abusive parent, just to survive, there's an opportunity to discover new information. But of course, it's not enough to simply tell yourself, okay, it's okay to be me now. Discovering that it's now safe to grip that handle of who you are requires doing so gently and repeatedly to see what actually happens today. And I think this is how we learn anything that's important. Not just by thinking about it, but by experiencing something different in close relationships than what our beliefs lead us to expect. And then doing that over and over until our nervous system recalibrates. So what does that look like for scapegoat survivors? Before testing out whether these old beliefs predict new outcomes, you need to find people who are safe enough to do this with. As that second pillar of recovery states, it's critical to move towards safe people and away from narcissistically abusive people. To really learn that you no longer have to believe that you are defective and undeserving, you have to find out that it's no longer necessary to do so with the people who matter to you today. Experimenting with acting in ways that defy these beliefs with strangers, I think, can only do so much. It can be possible to rationalize that it may be safe to act like a deserving person with people who don't know you, but with people close to you, it's a different story. So truly changing these pathogenic beliefs has to happen with people you're close to. And I think this is because you have to learn that that old danger that would have happened if you had touched the stove, which would have been losing the relationship to your parent and becoming nobody to no one, will no longer happen. In these new safe relationships, the person stays close to you when you are being yourself. So here are a few examples that might reflect reaching towards the handle to see if it's still hot in your life. Maybe it means telling your partner what you actually want instead of anticipating their needs and minimizing your own. Or letting your tone shift from tentative to direct when you're with a trusted friend. Or stating what's true for you, what your feelings are telling you, even if it might disrupt the conversation, just because your feelings matter to you. Or maybe making eye contact and even allowing pride to show on your face when someone tells you something they like about you. Each of these moments is like reaching towards that handle. And when you get met with acceptance or even just neutrality instead of punishment and abandonment, something powerful can happen inside. A conclusion along the lines of that was then, this is now, the stove is no longer hot, can begin to take hold. And this isn't just an idea. It becomes an experience, a kind of emotional data that begins to accumulate and gradually reshape how you live. Well, let's look at an anonymized case example to illustrate. Mark grew up as the scapegoat in his narcissistic family. His mother was relentlessly critical. Nothing he ever did was good enough. If he won an award, she'd find a flaw. If he expressed joy, she grew suspicious of him. If he needed support, she'd call him manipulative. Mark learned not to expect warmth nor recognition from her. He stopped sharing what mattered to him. He only showed the world what he thought they'd tolerate. And when he did have to interact with people, he wanted to just get it over with. The only times he didn't feel under attack was when he was alone. Mark found it impossible to think well of himself. He motivated himself to work at his job as a business analyst with a stick, not a carrot. He assumed he wasn't smart, but if he did this project just well enough, then maybe, just maybe, he could think differently about himself. The promise of relief from believing he was dumb was powerful. It made Mark work extremely hard at his job. Although he found success in the form of promotions, he never felt smart in the way he hoped. One night, Mark reflected on the hamster wheel he seemed to be on. No matter what he tried, he couldn't prove to himself that he measured up to his own standards. So he decided to see if therapy could help. Mark came into his first session and didn't know what to say to his therapist, who was named Craig, especially when Craig asked him how he was hoping the therapy could be helpful. So instead, Mark tried to relieve his own anxiety by putting things back on Craig. He said, "I don't know, man, isn't that why you're here? Aren't you supposed to tell me what I need to work on?" Craig, to Mark's surprise, said, "Well, Mark, if I did, I don't think that would help you know for yourself what you want out of life and how to get it. I worry that you'd just be given a prescription from me that offered what might be the false promise of happiness if you just do what I say. I see therapy as a chance to have someone along with you as you try to figure out the quality of life you want for yourself and to figure out what currently stands in the way of that. And what I found is that over time, we can figure out together how you can best overcome these obstacles." This relieved Mark. He said, "Yeah, I can see that. I guess the truth is that I'm not sure how or if therapy can help me. I just know that I'm tired of living this way. I work at my job so hard, but never feel like I am or have done anything good. People give me good feedback at work, but none of it gets in." And so began Mark's therapy in earnest. Craig asked him to tell him about what it was like growing up, and they grew to understand how necessary it had been for Mark to keep himself away from who he really was. That all he got was contempt and punishment when he showed himself at his home as a kid. Mark found himself having a unique experience in his life up to that point. He found that how he felt about what happened to him in the past and today mattered to someone else, in this case, Craig. Mark was used to people telling him there was something wrong with how he felt or thought, not Craig. This initially made Mark doubt whether he could trust Craig's judgment, like in that Groucho Marx sense of, "I'd never stoop so low as to be a member of a club that would have me." But as time wore on, that concern receded, and Mark could take in Craig's attention and faith in him. So after about a year into the therapy, Mark began discussing in more depth that cycle he found himself in at work. He said, "Nothing I do ever seems to be good enough in my own view. I work my butt off on projects and tell myself that I'll finally feel like a good analyst if I do this project well, and yet I never feel like I deserve such credit, even if others say I did a great job." Craig said, "It sounds like you've had this method inside yourself of providing hope that you can believe there's something good about yourself. In this case, that you're a very competent business analyst. Maybe that extends to simply being able to know that you are smart. But just like you couldn't think anything good about yourself with your mother around, so it is hard to do so today." Mark said, "You're right that I do just want to know that I'm smart, and I never think that I am. I feel like I always have to prove it." And Craig replied, "Yeah, that's what it seems like to me. What's it like to consider right now that you are smart? I mean, you're not engaged in work, of course, right now." And Mark said, "Those just seem like words. They don't mean much to me at all." And Craig said, "I bet they don't right now. I also suspect that's going to change over time. You've taken a really important first step in identifying how this has been affecting you." This was an important session because Mark went from trying to prove to himself that he was safe to believe he was smart in the privacy of his own mind to seeing if it could be true within his relationship with Craig. Mark likely felt safe over the year that they had worked together to bring this into the session. He inferred that Craig would be unlikely to respond like his mother did when Mark wanted to know and share what was good about him. And he was right. How to start testing the handle with people who matter. Well, if you're wondering how to begin this process, here's a path you might follow. But remember, this work isn't meant to happen in a vacuum or with people who are emotionally unavailable. To truly discover that the stove is no longer hot, I think one needs to test this in the context of close, safe relationships with people who care about you, respect you, and are capable of staying connected when you express yourself. So here's an exercise to perhaps walk yourself through. Step 1, identify a handle moment that you might avoid in close relationships. You might ask yourself, where do I hold back with the people I care most about? Or what part of myself do I hide because I fear they might reject it? These moments usually signal compliance with a pathogenic belief that you are defective or undeserving. In other words, continuing to live as though the stove is still hot. Step number 2, what do you fear will happen? This means bringing the old fear into awareness. Something like, if I speak up, they'll turn cold. Or if I let them see how much this matters to me, they'll use it against me. Or if I show pride or strength, they're going to pull away. These expectations, of course, came from these past harmful and abusive relationships, but they're still running in the present, and you just get to notice them at this step. Step number 3, choose a safe person to experiment with. It may be obvious by now, but the guidance here is not to start with someone emotionally unavailable, critical, or disinterested. Rather, choosing someone who's shown they care about you, has responded with warmth or curiosity in the past, and feels emotionally safe, even if that safety still feels unfamiliar. Once that person's found, on to step number 4, try a small test with that person. And this can look like expressing an honest preference, even if it's different from theirs, letting yourself be visibly proud of something in their presence, or being emotionally direct instead of careful or edited. These can be real moments of vulnerability, and that's also what can make them powerful in disconfirming these earlier held pathogenic beliefs that you're defective or undeserving. And step number 5, pay close attention to what happens. Did the feared outcome occur? Were they able to stay with you emotionally? Did they respond with interest or respect? Or at the very least, did they not abandon nor attack you? And you may notice an internal shift as simple as they stayed when I was myself. And step number 6 is to repeat, again, gently and over time. There's no need to rush, but each time you reach for the handle with someone safe and it doesn't burn, those old pathogenic beliefs weaken. And in their place, something new can grow. Things like maybe I don't have to hide anymore, or maybe being myself is no longer dangerous, or that I'm safe in the places that matter most to me now. A place to practice. My upcoming group class. Well, this kind of work isn't easy, and that's why I've created a live 8-week-long online course specifically for scapegoat survivors of narcissistic abuse. In this group, participants will be empowered to find safety in reaching for their own stove handles by being themselves. This will be through me sharing thoroughly researched information and tools, along with a facilitated sense of connection to the other participants in the group. You'll gain new experience that tells you you're a lot safer now than you were then. And you'll get support from others who get what it was like to be the scapegoat and are on the same path of recovery. In the online courses I've put together in the past, they've been more self-study, not live and in real time, as this one is going to be. But in those courses, I've always done, like a run-through, a test run. And in those test runs, I've done it with folks who volunteered to participate. And the most powerful part of the course tends to always be the bond that develops amongst the group members. And unfortunately, in this self-study format, it's impossible to replicate that. But that's why I wanted to begin to offer these classes, and I'm really excited about it because learning about tools to recover along with this group experience of connecting with other scapegoat survivors and supporting one another, I think makes what is learned feel more real and applicable in your life. If you'd like to learn more, especially about when enrollment opens, you can find the link in the description box below or by clicking here. And with that, I hope you found today's video useful, and I want to thank you all again for your continued support of this channel and the resources around it. Again, especially in the comments section, the community that I think has been built there and the support offered to one another. It's just, it's always great to see. And with that, I look forward to posting again next Friday. Take care.